This video is on the objective interpret the slope and y-intercept of the least squares regression line, which is that best fit line for like a scatter plot of data points. And this is the second video on this objective. I'm hoping you watched the first one where I went over a lot of instruction and it was a bit longer video. This one I'm just going to get into the problem and work on it. So again, if you want to see more about the objective, right, click on more instruction, look at their notes, their videos, their examples. Hopefully those help you out. Okay, so the scatter plot below shows the average cost of a designer jacket in a sample of years between 2000 and 2015. So the least squares regression line, right, the best fitting line modeling this data is given by y hat, right? They always use the y hat for the line, the predicted values instead of the actual values, right? The line equals negative 4,815 plus 3.765x. All right, so remember the number attached to the x is the slope. So the slope is 3.765. The number not attached to any variables, the constant, is the y-intercept. Alright. And here is a picture like looks like 5 data points here, where you have the year on the horizontal axis, and then the prices, the average cost in each of these years. Just 5 of these random years from 2000 to 2015 for the y coordinate is the average price for a designer jacket in that year. And then they have a little piece of the best fitting line drawn in here, right? The least squares regression line. Interpret the y-intercept of the least squares regression line. Is it feasible? Well, let's think about that. The y-intercept. Remember, that's the predicted value if x were 0. So if x were 0, well, first of all, that would be going all the way back to year 0. There was no year 0, by the way. We went from 1 BCE to 1 CE. Anyway, if we went back to like that transition period, back to year, quote, 0, this is telling me that y hat is negative 4,815. The y-intercept of this line is negative $4,815. Does that even make sense? For the average cost of a designer jacket in a year to be negative? Absolutely not. That makes no sense at all. Remember what y hat represents. Y hat is, the predicted average cost of a designer jacket in year X. So in year 0, we'd predict the average cost. Again, year 0 makes no sense either. But we'd predict the average cost of designer jackets back in year 0 must have been negative $4,815. How can something average a cost of negative dollars? So the y-intercept of this line makes no sense and should have no interpretation. Now, of these, the first and the third one are the only possible ones because the y-intercept, the other ones give us the slope, right? The slope of this line is 3.765. Now remember what the slope means. The slope of this line, this best fit line, is 3.765. That means if I'm on this line and I increase the year by 1, the average cost of a designer jacket, or the predicted value, the y hat, will increase by 3.765, or almost $3.77. That's what slope means. Right? But they're asking us to interpret the y-intercept. Again, the y-intercept is either the first or the third one, negative 4,815, which is not feasible because, again, a product cannot have a negative cost. Right? It doesn't make any sense to talk about interpreting the y-intercept here. Alright, so you got to really pay attention to the scenario you're in. What's the context of the problem? what do these variables represent? And then in the context of the problem, you can then say if the y-intercept makes sense for the problem, which here it does not. And I believe that's all for this question, and that's all you're asked to do. And again, hopefully you saw the first video. Where I explained how to interpret the slope and how to interpret the y-intercept. And again, you got to make sure that it actually makes sense in the context of the problem. And hopefully listening to me here, looking at the more instruction when you need to, reading the answer explanations, right? I'm hoping all this stuff helps you out when you go about working on this material on your own. And thank you for watching.